Hello, David Clarke here from DVC Training. In this video, I'm going to look at capturing DV and HDV on a computer in 2024. Always used to do this inside of my editing program, but because less people are using these kinds of formats, software makers have actually been slowly removing the ability to capture DV and HDV in their programs. And the latest one was Adobe Premiere, who actually removed ability to capture absolutely anything in their program with their 2024 version. If you no longer use these formats or you're not trying to capture some old tapes, it's not really a problem, of course. But if you do, how on earth can you capture stuff? So what I'm going to show you is two free programs that you can get off the interweb which will let you capture DV in one and HDV in the other. They are called WinDV, which is for DV capture, and HDV Split, which is for HDV capture. These work with any editing program. So obviously I'm a big user of Edius, but you can capture with this and take it into any program, even programs like DaVinci Resolve, which has never had the ability to capture either DV or HDV. It will read both of those formats. You need the studio version of Resolve to read HDV, but it'll happily read DV footage. So you can use that and pretty much take it into any program. If you happen to have Edius, you can go to the Edius Setup Manager. Now there's different ways of installing Edius, but the easiest way is to download this Setup Manager and let it do everything for you. Well, the Edius Setup Manager, which is this little icon down here next to the clock, if you right click on it, there's a bunch of different things and one of them says Edius Tools. And that will bring you up this set of tools. The first thing is something which will scan a project and tell you what filters are in it, which is actually jolly useful. There's some Edius tools here which you can pull up. And then there's this one, External Tools. You see this actually has links for both WinDV and HDV. So you could just come and click on WinDV, wait for it to pop up, and then it will let you open WinDV from there. So I'll put links in my description for where to get both of these programs. I've gone to them and downloaded them anyway. But interestingly, they shove that inside of the Edius Setup Manager. But say, if you've got Premiere or anything else, you can just happily download them from the internet and use them. They are free, they're not developed anymore, and they're not supported by the people that wrote, but they are free. And all you need is a computer with a FireWire card. I'm on a computer here which has got Windows 11. I have heard people say you can't capture DV or HDV on Windows 11. Obviously not true, about to do that. And people also say that you can't capture using a 14th generation processor. Also not true. So first of all, let's look at DV. I've literally plugged in my DV deck, got a FireWire going into the back of the computer. All you have to do is double click on WinDV. WinDV is a pretty simple program. It doesn't let you do things like batch capturing, where you can say start capturing from this to this or anything. It really doesn't do very much at all. Really all it does is to capture stuff. It does let you put stuff back to DV tape, but I wouldn't honestly recommend that as a backup method, because as soon as your DV tape deck stops working, you can't access it. In fact, when I was trying to do this tutorial, I've got about 4 DV cameras and none of them worked. Hadn't been used for ages. Thankfully, a head clean sorted one of them out. But as soon as these things stop working, you can't get at those tapes for toffee without going out and buying a second-hand deck from somebody. Anyway, obviously it's come up. It's noticed that I've got a camera plumbed in. Say a couple of things about setting up cameras in a minute, but there's a camera plumbed in and there's a config button which doesn't honestly do much. I would definitely recommend leaving it to type 2 files as opposed to type 1. This harks to way back. We did type 1 files which were only 2 gigabytes in file, and type 2s are a lot better. I would leave this all as it is. You've obviously got something here which is going to name it, so it's going to come up with a name which has got the year, date, month, hour and time in. I looked for information on anything else you might put in here and I couldn't really find it, to be perfectly honest. But I would leave that as it is, and all I would do is make sure you tell it where it's going to go. As I actually launched this from the Edius Setup Manager, it actually defaults to capturing in the Edius Setup Manager folder on the C drive, which is a very bad idea. So make sure you choose somewhere else. And this is where I would just come in here and obviously just make up a folder in whatever way you feel like doing. You can always move the stuff afterwards. And let's give it a name. Okay, that's ready to go. The only other thing is to press the capture button. Now, if you press the capture button right now, nothing happens. There's no playback or anything at all. This does not automatically start the deck unless you tick this little button. So your options are press capture and go over from press play manually, or tick that and then press capture. And it will start the deck and start capturing. And you can see the tape I'm actually capturing is something that's going to pop up later in this tutorial. I actually filmed the view on my Sony deck for, again, an old-fashioned problem that I thought I might as well include in this video, but you'll see that a bit later on. So that's why it looks like that, because yeah, that is actually what is on that tape. You click on capture, you let it get on with it. When you're finished, you stop capture and it stops capturing. Because that little thing is ticked, it started the deck, and because I've pressed that, it stopped capturing, but the deck itself is now in pause mode. Now, if you're used to capturing in an editing program, you're used to be able to fast forward, rewind, all that kind of thing. Yeah, this doesn't do any of that. It literally captures stuff. I used to batch capture stuff because I'd have a hard drive that's 300 gig and a tape would take up 12 gigs worth of that. So I'd batch capture just to use the bits that I wanted. Well, these days I've got terabytes of hard drive space. So I literally will put a tape in the camera, press the capture button, let it get on with it. And once it's finished, I'll do stuff with it afterwards. But that's it. That's really all this does. And there isn't a lot you need to do apart from install it, press capture and possibly tick that. Of course, if I go to my capture directory, there is the file. It's a standard DV AVI file that you will then be able to load up in your editing program. So very, very simple program. Now, I did have another capture program which I preferred. It wasn't free, although you can download it off the internet quite easily these days. It's one that I paid for called Scenalizer, which is this thing. And that one does let you start and stop decks and put in tape names and things like that. And even lets you do batch capture. As I say, I did pay for this back in the day, but since the guy stopped developing it, he did put out a version on the internet that anybody can use. And you could also use that. So here we are, started off, and it should be working, but it isn't. It actually does work sometimes, even under Windows 11, but a lot of the time it doesn't, so it's been unreliable, whereas the very simple WinDV, for me, has always worked under Windows 11. Again, just a problem with using programs which are this old. It's a shame if you've got DV or HDV that you can't capture in the programs anymore, but you can understand why people have got rid of it, because most people are using card-based cameras. You can't buy these things anymore, so it makes sense to drop it, because it's just one less thing they have to support. The other thing is capturing HDV. For that, I use a thing called HDV Split. Again, I'll put the link in the description below, or if you've got the Edius Setup Manager, you can go from there. But again, this thing lets you capture HDV. It's been around for ages, and it's always said beta. Somebody wrote it, put it up on the interweb for free, and never finished off. And you can still download it quite happily. It's just, it's always going to say beta. But it does let you capture HDV clips. As you can see, it's all grayed out. That's because at the moment my deck is a DV deck and I need an HDV deck. So I'll put the HDV deck in. It's now alive and ready to go. I did cut out a bit of faffing in the middle there, which is what I'm going to go over and what that screen I was going to show you about. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Again, nothing new about that faffing. It's the same faffing we've had to do for donkey's years. But anyway, you got your HDV camera plumbed in. And you can see here you've obviously got two tabs, capturing and splitting. Splitting will take an HDV file that you've captured and split it based on the date and time of the recording. Capturing lets you capture. It will let you capture and split files as you do it. There's a little split scene button there. So theoretically, you can capture stuff and it will split it up. So before I capture, I've got to decide where it's going to go. So let's select the output directory again, and I'm going to go straight to that same folder. And I'm going to call it HDV, and I'm now ready to capture. Don't really fiddle with anything else there, and I'm probably going to turn off this, but I'll explain that in a second. All you got to do is you come up to here, you press the play button, it starts the deck going, and then you press the record button, and it starts recording. And you can see down here, we're getting up stuff, and I don't know if you can notice there, but it keeps saying scene change detected. I haven't sped this up, it's literally finding a new scene pretty much every second or so. And that's one thing that I have found with this version these days. Didn't used to happen, but I have found with this version is that you really need to turn off scene splitting because otherwise it'll produce a lot of crap. Here we are. That's what it's actually captured. Lots and lots of very small files. It's detecting a scene change every half second or something. I don't know why. It's possible my deck and tapes are rather knackered and that's causing the problem. Because HDV, I always found was very, very picky when it came to the tapes. Simple dropouts or anything could cause all sorts of problems. It could just be my stuff's old, or it might be just the way this works on current machines with Windows 11. So turn that off, then start it playing, then capture. And it just captures one file. And again, this is what I tend to do with this. Set it up, bosh, just let it get on it, do the entire file, and then fiddle with it afterwards. And as you can see here, I'm now getting an M2T file in that folder. If you used to capture with Premiere, it would make MPEG files rather than M2T files. Everything else would generally make M2T files. If you captured with Edius, it could convert it to Grass Valley on the way in. It could take HDV files and make it into something more usable. This doesn't do anything like that. It literally just captures it straight off the tape and nothing else. And I just let it capture the whole thing. If I then want to split it up into scenes, then I'd go to Scene Splitting, click on Add, and add in that file. Decide where it's going to go, and the folder I'm going to stick it in. And then the only other thing you've got down here is, okay, it's going to split it up into several files based on the date and time of recording. So basically every time you pause the camera, the date and time changes, so it can notice that and make up a file for every time you stop the camera. And if you're going to do that, does it just call them HDV 1, 2, 3, 4, or does it stuck the date and time afterwards? I like the date and time, and this is telling you how the date and time turns up. So the percentage is it telling the thing, type in the date that's actually on the file, and then it just puts this in order. So if you wanted to put it in date, month, year, as in the UK, you would change it to that, for example. I would probably just leave this all at defaults and do it. I'd literally shove it in there, add it and start and get it to find files. Now in this case, yeah, it's messed it up. There must be something wrong with my actual recording to get all these files out of it. So I'm just going to take that one big file into my editing program and use it. This will go into Premiere, it will go into Resolve, it will go into Edius. I say it will go into Resolve, it will go into the studio version of Resolve. I've had this not load up into the free version. I don't think you can load MPEG files into the free version. Might be a way around it that I'm not aware of. But since I use the studio version, it's not a problem. But yeah, that's how you'd capture it. And of course, you don't have to capture the whole thing. You could press the play button, record a bit, and then stop. I tend to do the whole thing and then fiddle around with it afterwards, because leave it for an hour. Now, the other thing worth mentioning is there is an option to do a preview, but it's grayed out. The very first error message that we had down here is HDV Split can't find an MPEG-2 encoder. Windows used to come with the ability to play back MPEG files, and they've taken it out. I think it was part of Windows 10, but I can't remember anymore. This is all really old stuff. So it can't play back MPEG-2 without a video decoder. But it'd be nice if I could see a preview whilst capturing. You can do that if you install FFD Show, like it says here, which might be something you've never heard of. You just go on the interweb, you download the latest version of FFD Show. Again, I'll put a link to that in the description. I've downloaded this. And I'm going to double click on it and run it. It gives you a setup language and you just let it do its magic. Go next, FFD Show, and then you finally get to this one. And this one says, okay, use FFD Show to play certain files back. And then what you want to do is you want to come down here to MPEG-2 and choose one of these. I tend to just leave it on that one. Go next. This one asks you about speakers. I tend to leave that on stereo and install it. So the one thing I did do there was to tell it to play back MPEG-2. Now when I pop this up, preview is there. And there we are. I'm now getting a preview of the video. Now you may find you have to fiddle with the configuration. So once it's installed, if you just click on your start menu and then go and find FFD Show again, you can see here you've got stuff for the video decoder configuration and the audio decoder. So let's go to video and drag it up. And you can see here with codecs selected at the top, I can pop down here and find MPEG-2. There we are, MPEG-2 is currently set to that, which is what I set during installation. If it doesn't work and it comes up blank, try something else. So you set that, apply, restart HDV Split, see what happens. But like I said, I did find that this one, lib MPEG-2, is the one that worked for me. I also found it could be a little bit temperamental. I had to restart the program a couple of times before it actually worked, otherwise it was coming up with a big white screen like this and not changing. So it's not perfect. It's a free program. It wasn't designed for Windows 11. You don't have to worry about the preview. You don't even have to bother to put this FFD Show on because it will quite happily capture stuff just by using the program and starting and stopping it, and you can have a look on the screen on your camera. And is it perfect? Is it a good alternative to doing stuff inside the editing program? No. I'd rather do it inside the editing programs. But they've taken it out, and they've taken it out for a good reason, so you have to deal with the reality of stuff. Yeah, things like DaVinci Resolve would never capture DV or HDV, and in some of the earlier versions they wouldn't actually let you load it up either. Couldn't load up DV AVR files for all sorts of versions. I think it's been in there since 15 or 16 or something. But when I was using version 9, when I first started using Resolve, yeah, you couldn't load it for toffee. At least you can load the stuff up. Resolve does not see the timecode in it. So you look at that clip and it hasn't got any timecode. It starts at 0. Even if you go into the settings of Resolve and you say get timecode embedded in the clip, doesn't see it. Here's the HDV stuff. Another problem I get in Resolve with these clips, which again doesn't happen for me in other programs, in Edius and the like. I put that in there. I mean, you can probably tell from the thumbnail, it's squashed. It's like I filmed in CinemaScope, which I didn't. This is HDV. It's supposed to be 16 by 9. It's 1440 by 1080. Why isn't it filling the screen? Resolve gets the aspect ratio wrong. So go into the clip itself, go to Clip Attributes, and here it's got that as the aspect ratio. That's bonkers, man. I'm going to put it on 133, which is the correct aspect ratio for HDV. And now it's the correct aspect ratio. Does this peculiar thing of the clip itself is 1080 high, but because of the way Resolve does aspect ratios, it ends up as a little thing in the middle. Easiest thing to sort that out is to come into here, go to retiming and scaling, and then fill, and it'll fit, which is silly. Again, don't get that problem with other programs, Edius and Premiere. I only get that sort of thing with Resolve. Because, you know, HDV isn't really something Resolve is that interested in. But at least it does work. And of course, if you want to, you can then convert it into something else. I can actually convert it from here. Loads of ways of doing it, but one of the ways is the Media Manager inside of Resolve. Decide where it's going to go, choose transcode, choose all media, so it even does stuff that isn't on the timeline, and then video, and then choose a format and convert it. Although I don't bother with HDV because it actually works quite happily now in my computers. But yeah, that's how I would do it. HDV split for HDV and DV clip for DV. And they'll work with any programs that support that stuff. The other option is not capturing it through FireWire, but instead capturing it through something like a Blackmagic Intensity Pro. Only downside of that is that you are changing it. The advantage of using a FireWire is it does an exact copy of the original. Anything going through an HDMI or whatever, it is changing it on the way in very, very slightly. Now, the other thing I was going to mention is to do with certain decks that can play back both DV and HDV. And this is an old chestnut. It was on my old tutorials. Just thought I'd revise it again here for people that have forgotten. When you plug in a deck, it will turn up in Device Manager. So I just right-clicked on the thing here and chosen Device Manager. And I've got my 1394 controller, which is a Texas Instruments chipset controller. I always use those for DV and HDV. I think they're the best ones. So I've got that, which is a separate PCI card. The camera turns up in here as well, but it'll turn up as either a camera here. So you can see it's a Sony AVC tape recorder, which turns up on standard video controllers. It turns up there when it's seen as an HDV deck. And when it's seen as a DV deck, it turns up under imaging devices. And it has to be seen as the correct thing before either of those programs can work. So if I load up HDV Split now, it's turning up as a DV deck, HDV Split's not working. And obviously if it's seen as an HDV deck, then WinDV is not working. And this particular deck can actually appear as both. It can be both DV and HDV. There's a setting in the menu where you tell it whether it's going to appear as a DV deck or an HDV deck, or whether it's just going to switch automatically depending on the tapes. Now you can shove that in there, and if it works for you, great. But most of the time I find that goes wrong for me. I have to specifically set it up so that it actually is seen either as a DV deck or an HDV deck. So I go into the menu, and this is where I pull up that thing that I was recording earlier. This is the menu on my Sony deck. There'll be similar menus in other cameras and decks. And I go into the menu and I go down to here and I take it off of auto and choose either DV or HDV, depending on what tape I'm about to play. Now once I've set that, I'll load up my capture program and see if it works. Now, it's vaguely possible that even when you do that, the computer doesn't notice, and even though you set HDV, it will actually still think it's DV. The only way you can tell for sure is by pulling up Device Manager and seeing where it turns up. If it's turning up under there, it's seen as DV. If it's turning up down here, it's seen as HDV. And that's this particular deck. Sometimes they appear in different places. What I would do is, if you set it definitely for DV, but it's still not working in WinDV, I would then shut down all capture programs, turn the deck off, and then turn the deck on again. Wait a couple of seconds, and that normally sorts it out. But yeah, I would always make sure that menu option is set so it knows what type of deck it's supposed to be. Again, if your capture program's still not working, close down the capture program, turn the deck on and off, wait a couple of seconds, you'll probably be okay. But that's an old chestnut that we've had for many, many years, so things haven't changed on that, it's still exactly the same. But apart from that, yeah, I can still capture DV and I can still capture HDV as long as I've got a working deck. I would definitely recommend, if you've got lots of tapes hanging around somewhere, just even if you haven't got time to do stuff with them, capture the lot. Buy yourself a decent large-size hard drive, capture the lot and have them sit on there until you've got time to do it, because as soon as your deck stops working, you can't access those tapes. And right now you can buy second-hand decks on eBay. You can't buy new ones. Sooner or later you might not be able to. So I'd definitely go ahead, capture all that stuff, even if you're not going to do anything right now. And if you don't have a program that can do it built in, these are the ones to use: WinDV and HDV Split. Final thing I want to mention is about capturing FireWire on laptops. You basically can't. No laptops these days come with FireWire built in, so you have to find some way to add it. Now, we used to be able to use a FireWire to Thunderbolt adapter that Apple produced. This doesn't work anymore with Thunderbolt 4 sockets. I think it still works with Thunderbolt 2 sockets, but not with Thunderbolt 4, which is what you'll find on more modern computers. I've had a couple and just didn't get it working at all and had to basically give up. And when you look on the internet and somebody says, oh, FireWire capture doesn't work with modern computers, I think that's what they're referring to. This Thunderbolt to FireWire adapter doesn't work, but it does work if you use a FireWire card in a PC. Now, what I have done is actually to get an external box that takes PCI cards. So a Thunderbolt box you can stick a PCI card in, stuck a Texas Instruments FireWire card into that, and then plugged that into a Thunderbolt 4 port and been able to capture that way. That has worked for me. Haven't tried it in a few months, but that definitely did work for me, and I set it up for a customer. Gets quite expensive though. A Thunderbolt external box is £200-300. Then you get a card, and then you get a Thunderbolt cable, which is normally about 30 or 40 quid. So it works out quite expensive, but that was a way of actually capturing through a FireWire on a laptop. Actually, it's probably easier just to capture through FireWire onto a desktop using a PCI card. It'll cost you £30, and then just move the stuff over to a laptop, rather than going through this whole Thunderbolt external box thing. Anyway, hope you found that useful. Obviously, let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. Apart from that, visit my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk, for more information on video stuff. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.